has been experiencing a rising number of natural and man-made disasters over the past several years. But every disaster seems to expose various inadequacies in our disaster management and preparedness.
It is expected that in future we will be getting more intense floods and longer, more intense droughts.
How can we improve on the management of slow onset environmental disasters such as floods and droughts in order to mitigate the perennial loss of life and property? Now, factors such as environmental degradation and climate change are increasingly contributing to natural disasters around the world. How prepared are we to deal with these rising challenges? I'm Esther in Baringo County, where massive flooding is testing the mettle of our country's disaster preparedness and management. Baringo County, about 11,000 square kilometers of semi-arid country. Massive deforestation, overgrazing, and other factors such as climate change have led to increased degradation of the land, worsening the impacts from various environmental disasters and their patterns as well. I visit RAE Trust here in Baringo, an organization run by Mary Roberts, an environmental conservationist, who is spearheading a small initiative to reclaim the degraded land.
Environmental degradation is a huge issue in all semi-arid areas, certainly in Kenya, and I think in semi-arid areas worldwide. You already aware of this?
This area looks totally bare.
This area is totally bare. This is overgrazed. Yeah.
And now, what are you doing?
Okay, now what we're doing is this over here. You can see where we've fenced off an area, and it's managed properly. And at this time, the rains have just recently stopped, but we have a huge amount of grass in there. People, there are groups who own this land. They put their livestock in there. They're fattening cattle for sale, and they make money.
So you plant this grass?
We plant this grass, yes.
Is this native grass? Where do you get it from?
No, it's a native grass from this area.
So where did it go in the first place?
Too much livestock on the same piece of ground all the time. This gets a rest, so when it's raining, after grazing, we don't have livestock on them, so it comes back. But out here, it doesn't get a chance to have that rest in order to regenerate.
Initiatives such as this one can be adopted on a massive scale, which in turn can help mitigate some environmental disasters.
People are moving to what you call marginal lands, sensitive lands whose soils are more loose. And this is likely to accelerate the pace or the rate at which you find soil washing into the waterways and causing siltation. Siltation is one of the critical things that cause floods.
Ikinyesha huku, maji inafurika sana for 2 hours. Ya so zinatoka huko juu, milima, ikienda wapi like Baringo. Yeah.
I mean, look at the roundedness of these rocks. It should tell you that we have, huge amounts of water that rush past this place, with such force that it actually wears the rocks.
Sasa maji ikifurika, maji is very red, iko nyekundu sana kwa sababu ya mchanga. Yeah. Na sasa hiyo unajua kama hapa inafurika zaidi.
Mary Roberts is also the proprietor of Roberts Camp, one of the many tourist lodges in the area. He is counting losses on the business side of things. His tourist resort, which he had built about a mile away from Lake Baringo, is now submerged in water after the water levels in Lake Baringo started rising over a year ago.
There's a certain area around all the lakes where the floods are going to come down. You've got a situation where the siltation is coming in the lake. I'm fairly sure that if we measured the volume of water now, it's probably the same as it was in '63, because we've lost about 3 meters of lake bottom has come up with siltation. There was a cottage just here. It's gone completely. You see the roof?
Yes.
Sticking out of the water just a little bit? That's the roof. Yeah?
So can you say you've had any support from the government in terms of managing this? I mean, you're a whole proprietor.
Unfortunately, no. But I think the time that if we ever even hope for support, would be when the lake goes down, to rebuild. And I think maybe in future people should really be prevented from building within that area because it'll happen again.
Handling people who are reluctant to move has been a challenge. But by so doing, they are really exposing themselves to much more danger.
Hakuna preparedness yote imefanyika, hata pia hakuna awareness yote ulipewa community ya kuwa maji inakuja. Hata hizo ofisi ya disaster management hakuna mtu hapo ground. Labda tu wakati sasa imefanyika ndio watu wanakuja sasa. Kama sasa hiyo kama tuna hiyo Red Cross ndio zilete hizo matapolins kusaidia wale watu wamekuwa affected already.
Lakini hii si mara ya kwanza hii mambo kufanyika? Hii
ni mara ya kwanza after an estimate period kama ya 50 years. Sababu hata sisi hatujaiona, hata wazee wanatuambia maji ilikuwa wakati maji ilikuwa hiyo level ni early 60s.
Unajua sasa kama maji zimekuja kama hizi, unajua asubuhi unaweza lala alafu maji imekuja usiku.
Kwa kila kitu yote.
Kwanza hapa hii kama hizi kama kanuni tunatumia hapa, ukiangalia sasa hizi zinaenda. Na hii ni pesa mingi. Hii. Haya, ukiwacha sasa masufuria hapa masahani zinaenda na upepo usiku kama unalala.
Mmekaa namna hii kwa muda gani?
Muda sasa hizi miaka 2.
Mkiwa na hii shida tu ya maji na
hii shida miaka 2 sasa hizi. Tuko na hii shida. Serikali walilete sijui I don't know World Vision, I don't know. Walilete tu kitu kidogo kudanganya watu. Sijui blanketi kidogo patia watu hema. Lakini ni ile tu moja mbili na hakuna kitu kinasaidia.
The claims that the government is not doing much. I think the people are a bit impatient. Once we got this report, we informed the relevant authorities and the Directorate of Special Programs, which is under the Ministry of Devolution and Planning, is organizing to dispatch quite a substantial amount of food stuff to the displaced families. We have a plan to have disaster manager officers or disaster managers in all the counties, the 47 counties that we have. And the purpose of having those people there would really be to sensitize the communities about the apparent disasters within their local areas. And once we can get the communities involved to participate in disaster prevention.
Meanwhile, the floods continue to bring along a host of other complications for the residents. The local school children have to get to and from the school using boats and canoes, not to mention the growing menace of hippos and crocodiles.
Yanda tu kitu jioni, kaenda kuchota maji, malafu sikuona mamba akanrukia. Nilishika wale alafu nilikuwa nafuta akanipasua pa mfupa inaonekana. Alafu hapa tena akaniuma.
We try to look at what measures can be put in place, whether in terms of infrastructure, or the improvement of the natural storage, and if afforestation can also help to reduce the impacts of flooding. It is expected that in future we will be getting more intense floods and longer, more intense droughts.
From early warning systems to disaster trust funds and stockpiling our food resource, what can we do as a nation to ensure better disaster preparedness and management, especially of slow onset disasters such as some floods and droughts? Let's join Dan as he discusses this further on Green Talk next.
Kenya is particularly disaster prone, and the risks often affect the most vulnerable people in the country. How can we solve the issue of disaster management once and for all? On Green Talk today, to help us take on the elephant in the room that is poor disaster management, please welcome Florence Mahanu, Project Officer from ACT. Welcome to Green Talk, Florence.
Thank you.
All right, we all know about the cycles of flooding, but every time we seem to be almost taken surprised, which is a bit weird. So why do we always, in your opinion, always seem to be tackling disasters in a very haphazard way?
The interesting part in this country is our response. Our response mechanism is quite wanting. We really have to find a way of seeing how to respond to these disasters. You find that communities have a way of getting information about disasters that are likely to happen. And this traditional information, in terms of it being tapped to be utilized in the modern Kenya today, I think that mechanism of dealing with that is a bit wanting.
And you know, when you're dealing with issues, especially like climate change, you know, weather patterns are changing. Even the traditional ways in which they were using to predict certain things might not be able to apply because of this phenomenon called climate change. So what would be your ideal proposal to solve this problem?
There's a lot of technology that we can embrace. We have remote sensing, we have GIS mapping, we have even the phone technology in terms of conveying information to the right authorities. What we need to have is proper mechanisms. I know that in this country we have a lot of early warning mechanisms. So it is very important that the national body that is dealing with disaster management be able to coordinate the different components.
It's interesting that you brought in the issue of coordination, national coordination.
Yeah.
But that national coordination, in terms of policy, there doesn't seem to be any coherence in that sense. Is there any national policy that deals with national disasters?
Yes, there is a national policy that deals with national disasters. Maybe what we need to do is beef up what they're doing. They need to get out and reach out to the various sectors that are undertaking the different aspects in disaster management, because the body is there. But what we are saying is that we seem to be, those of us who are responding to these disasters are each responding from our own corners. Yeah? So there needs to be a strategic direction taken in terms of how do we bring all these efforts together so that it is managed better.
It's almost as if the Kenya Red Cross is our national disaster management sort of agency, but should we just leave the Kenya Red Cross to be doing this work? Because I think it's a serious issue and it's happening even as they speak. How can we be more prepared?
I would challenge like the civil society organizations in terms of in terms of training communities to respond. Now, you know very well that you live in Budalangi, yeah? You know that when it starts raining, this is the way the water goes. Organizations need to strategically train communities on how best to respond. You know, disasters are bound to happen. Yeah? It is something that we cannot eradicate. Yes. But response, it will reduce the magnitude of the impact. Less property destroyed, less lives lost. How best can we deal with the situation in a cost-effective way? And if we train people on, in times, if you see the weather behaving in a certain manner, these are the things that you should deal with in terms of dealing with that disaster.
Well, Florence Makanu, we're going to have to end there. But thank you very much for being on Green Talk.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Now, disaster preparedness, management and response is the duty of every Kenyan. And as we have just heard, there are many ways in which we can stem the impact of various hazards if we are keen enough. So be sure to meet our green hero and learn more about this after the break. Don't go away.
The area we are in, it's part of semi-arid area, and as we know that semi-arid areas in Kenya face a lot of challenges due to drought. Sand dams have been tested and they've been shown to be viable projects. First of all, it's a low-cost technology. It's also a low technology that even when you're working with communities, they're able to learn and they're able to work in the project and also learn from you, the technical people, and also you're able to come up with the project in the long run.
Hii sand dam itatusaidia sababu watu wenyewe watapata maji ya kunywa ya animals, na itatusaidia ili tupande hii tomatoes, cabbages, ndio tupate mboga.
A sand dam is a long-term project. It's sustainable. Once you build the wall and it rains, it starts to collect water there and then. Sand dam projects have had great impacts. At the end of the day, the environment around this area will be improved. People around this area will be able to have a source of water that is a year-round supply, and it is sustainable, so they're able to access the water throughout.
Kabla hii damu kutengenezwa, ilikuwa pakavu kabisa, ilikuwa mawe tu. Ilinisaidia mbele ya maji ya kunywa na maji ya kupanda hata mboga.
The sand dams can be replicated in other places, like in northern Kenya, like in Turkana, in Samburu. It all depends on the condition. Is there sandy sediments along the river? Is there a rock bed? Is a river seasonal? Are the banks able to hold the structure? That's it.
My name is Abbas Gulet, and I'm the Secretary General of the Kenya Red Cross Society. We are facing a more serious problem than we did 10, 20 years ago. We know most of the disasters in this country. We get rains twice a year, and you know where the flooding would be. Certain areas along the Tana River, in Kano Plains and in Nyando, in areas of Busia, Budalangi, where you'll have your normal traditional flooding twice in a year. We could cut major dams along rivers and along waterways, and those dams, water can be stored, and this water can be used throughout the year. We can do large-scale farming in this country than we are doing today. We can produce more seeds than we are producing today, so that then more farming can be done, as opposed to importing a lot of seeds from outside this country that is very expensive, that also is a burden to foreign exchange. My message to all Kenyans is that disasters have happened before, they continue to happen, and they will continue to happen. We need to be prepared as a nation. And, you know, every citizen in this country is responsible for ensuring that we all avoid all forms of disasters.
Someone needs to prepare for disaster by first assessing the area where they stay, ensuring that they know the possible hazards and risks that exist in those areas. The second phase of it is ensuring that you put in measures, like, for example, if you are staying in a place that has a possibility of flooding, then you need to vacate and look for alternative place to stay. If you are in a place that has drought, then you need to look for alternative means of fending yourself in terms of food. You need not to rely on one kind of food. If you are a pastoralist, you can still grow some crops and farm and look for alternatives. But one also needs to listen to the early warnings, especially the weather forecast. You need to know that if it is predicted that there will be a lot of rains, then the chances of flooding is also increased. If there will be little rain, then chances of drought may exist. So if you hear such kind of warnings, whether they are through television or through the other medias that we have, then you need to heed those warnings and take them serious and vacate if you're told to vacate.
So that's it for this week on Project Green. Send us your comments and suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, every one of us has a part to play in every grand scheme of things. What part can you play in our country's disaster preparedness and management? See you next week. Now we're rolling, man, I'm telling you. Okay. We're going home, we're going home.